What's up guys, it's Colin from Next Man Up, and with the new year in swing, I'm here to give you the second edition of my NBA mock draft. A lot of things have changed since the last time we talked NBA, and to go along with that, I think it's about time that we switch things up over here as well. So, instead of going with the NBA's current standings to determine the order of the draft, we're going to use Tankathon's lottery simulator feature to determine the order that we're going with. And after randomizing, Tankathon has given us this order. So as you may notice, there's a good amount of shakeup towards the top, with Toronto jumping into the top 5, reminiscent of 2021, and the Charlotte Hornets have officially grabbed the number 1 pick, but we'll break down those picks more once we get started. For picks 15 through 30, those will be made up of the standings as of January 3rd, so let's roll. One last thing, this NBA draft is wide open, and I've heard certain scouts claim that there's as many as 8 guys who could land at that number 1 overall pick. So I guarantee I'll make a pick that makes one of you angry in the comments, so please feel free to start a conversation down below, and remember, at the end of the day, this is all just my opinion. Let's get straight to it. With the number 1 pick, the Hornets have jumped all the way up, and I have them taking Ron Holland from the G League Ignite. Holland came into the preseason as somewhat of an agreeable number 1 sort of guy, but through many uncertain seasons for the draft's top contenders, he's found himself more in the mix with the other guys around him. With that being said, the Hornets have a lot of holes on this team, and if it weren't for Detroit, who picks next, they'd have a pretty good case for being the worst team in the league. LaMelo Ball is the franchise when he's on the court, and last year you brought in Brandon Miller to develop into a 3-level scorer. Now it's time to bring in a guy with massive defensive upside and a high motor to be a physical force for your team. Miles Bridges is a name who will most likely not be on your roster next season, but I can see a guy like Ron Holland filling in that role and improving levels beyond it. His 3-point numbers aren't blowing me away, but he's continued to take the shots and his form is refined enough to make me confident in his future shooting ability. The Hornets need to look for upside, but they also need a player who's ready to start at forward from the day he's drafted, and that would be Ron Holland, with his incredible on-ball ability and his confidence with the ball in his hands. At 2, I have the Detroit Pistons taking Alex Sarr from Perth. Alex Sarr is a highly skilled French big man who's refined his type of game to what it will look like in the NBA. A comparison I've seen thrown around recently is Jaren Jackson Jr., and I do think that would be the perfect fit for this Pistons team. I understand people will be upset to know I'm giving the Pistons a more defensive-minded player, especially considering the offensive lows that we've seen from the Pistons all year. But to me, I think the Pistons' ceiling will involve them returning to their form of the early 2000s and playing defensive-oriented basketball. A frontcourt pairing of Alex Sarr and Jalen Duren would be one of the best rebounding duos in the league as well, and it would make teams scared to drive to the lane. Sarr has also shown flashes of being a great face-up scorer, and he has a decent ball handling game which will make him much more versatile than the average 7-footer. At number 3, I have the Portland Trailblazers taking Zachary Richache out of France. As of today, Portland is the second worst shooting team in the entire league. Sorry, Memphis. So when I see a 6'8 forward shooting 47% from 3 over the last 30 games, it's going to be hard for me not to say that the Trailblazers could use him. He has the physical tools to be a great NBA player, and despite him not being known for his ball handling, I feel like he has a playmaking upside that goes against what his box number scores suggest. Richache has developed from a bad shooter to a decent one to arguably the best in the draft, and with that sort of work ethic alongside a gifted teammate like Scoot Henderson, I think the sky would be the limit for Richache. At number 4, I have the Toronto Raptors jumping up and taking Jacoby Walter out of Baylor. If there's one thing the Raptors like, it's size. And I was tempted to pick up one of the true point guards in this class, whether it be Castle, Toppich, or Dillingham, who we'll talk about later. But we've seen the Raptors make a real effort to force Scotty Barnes to be their primary ball handler, and I've liked what I've seen from him. Forcing him into a role similar to a guy like Paolo Banchero could show for drastic improvements in Toronto, so they need to make a move to maximize his success in that role. Bringing in Walter adds a high-level shooter, arguably up there with Richache as the best in this class, and someone who has flashed real defensive upside as well as rebounding effort. Comparably to a guy like Gary Trent Jr., who currently runs the 2 for the Raptors, Walter could be a much more dynamic scorer and can mold into an elite-level second option if the Raptors take him. At number 5, San Antonio was finally on the clock, and they take Stephon Castle out of UConn. Stephon Castle hasn't necessarily done one thing that separates him as being the best point guard in the class, but he's more of a mix of different attributes that convinced me that he could dominate in the right scheme. Castle missed a couple weeks recently with injury, and it took him a little bit to come back to his scoring production, but he's an elite level playmaker in this class, and he proved that he can actually work well without the ball in his hands, something that has developed for him a lot since high school. He plays in a hectic backcourt at UConn with a lot of college level guys who are better than him right now but don't have that long-term potential that Castle does. So he can be overshadowed at times, but he knows how to get to his spots, he's quick with the ball, and at 6'6", he'd be a much better version at the 1 than the Spurs are currently trying to create with Jeremy Sochan. Stephon Castle will let Victor Wembanyama cook, and that's really all you can ask for. At number 6, the Washington Wizards are on the clock, and I have them taking Cody Williams out of Colorado. To be completely transparent, Cody Williams is by far my favorite prospect in this class, and don't be surprised if he works his way into number 1 contention very soon. Cody Williams did recently injure his wrist, which has sidelined him the last couple of games, but beforehand, he's been shooting 63% from the field and 60% from behind the three-point line. These are insane numbers for a lanky wing playing in the Pac-12. Williams can get to the rack, swing the ball to the open man, bully shorter defenders despite being skinny, and overall, do everything you want from an offensive prospect. I wouldn't say Williams is an elite defender, but there's a certain attitude that I saw from a guy like Jaime Jaquez Jr. last year that Williams shares, which makes me confident there'll be plus players on that end, so he's the real deal. The Wizards need talent at any position, and I think Cody Williams is the best available. At number 7, the Grizzlies are on the clock, and I have them grabbing Matas Buzelis from the G League Ignite. Matas is a player I was pretty high on going into the year because of his elite scoring ability and seamless fit into pretty much any squad that he had been a part of. Those things were not shown in his early G League campaign, and he was clearly off his game before being sidelined with injury. With that being said, he's came back strong, and I still think he can grow his confidence to being one of the better spot-up shooters in the entire class, while doing a little bit of everything with the ball in his hands and having a great NBA frame. The Grizzlies have their core players, they just need high-level guys to fill in the gaps. Matas has shown his versatility through his young career, and with guys like Ja Morant and Desmond Bane, I can't deny I think he would develop tremendously. At number 8, the Atlanta Hawks are up, and I have them taking Donovan Clingan, the center from UConn. Unfortunately, the Huskies' big man Donovan Clingan will be missing some time due to injury, but we've seen the impact that he's had on the defensive end, and I don't think that'll slow down at any point in this guy's career. The Hawks need to move on from Capella at some point soon, and despite his original chemistry with Trey, they need a big who is much more athletic and provides some more switchable defense to avoid downhill drivers. Clingan is that guy. Clingan can block anything in his area code, and he showed versus Gonzaga that he'll put his shoulder into a defender to get a bucket if he has the size advantage. The Hawks need to go a different direction in the front court, and I prefer Clingan to a lot of what they have in-house. At number 9, I have the Bulls taking Isaiah Collier from USC. Isaiah Collier was mocked around number 1 for the last month or so, but recently his production has fallen off a cliff. Whether it be the point guard not meshing with Bronny James, or generally his risky style of play finally being reflected in his turnover numbers, there's no denying that Collier just hasn't looked great. What we do know is that when he's on his game, he's still one of the best guard finishers that's not in the NBA. He's a willing playmaker, and in the past he's been a reliable shooter as well. If he goes to Chicago, he'll pair with Kobe White, who is a great scorer, and generally would have much less pressure on him if he was projected to be an all-star level point guard from day one on some horrible team. With LaVine most likely on the move, Chicago should invest in an incredibly high upside guard who we know can play ball. At number 10, the Rockets are on the clock, and I have them taking Rob Dillingham out of Kentucky. Rob Dillingham is one of the most electric players in the entire country, and he does it coming off the bench on almost every night. Rob comes in at 6'2", 160 pounds, very slim, but plays so much bigger as he profiles as a potential combo guard in the NBA. He can shoot the lights out, he can play make, and his defensive rotations have improved greatly. It's easy to worry about his finishing and defense as a smaller guy, but Houston has enough of that to go around, and the prospect of Rob Dillingham and Amen Thompson duo off the bench will get Rockets fans very excited. I think he would be a great piece to add. At number 11, OKC is up, and I have them taking Khalil Ware out of Indiana. I am higher on Ware than most, but seeing the NBA translation we saw earlier from a guy like Trayce Jackson-Davis for Golden State, I think I'll take my chances on Indiana big men for right now. Ware's an incredible shot blocker, he can shoot, and he showed in a matchup against Donovan Clingan that he doesn't shy away from guarding premier bigs. If you get him working with Chet Holmgren in the front court, they can be very dangerous, or at the very least, he can take the role of a guy like Jay Will. The talent is there, it's just if he has that mentality to be a great. If I'm a Thunder fan, with all their draft capital, I think I'd be willing to take that chance. At number 12, I have the Portland Trailblazers taking Tejan Saloon. Tejan Saloon is a player who's slowly starting to grow on me, and I see a very similar rise from him that we saw from a player like Bilal Coulibaly last season. Saloon is a raw young forward from France who has started to build consistency from deep and is incredibly athletic. I like his ability around the rim on both sides, and I think with free range, he could showcase that athleticism in a very big way. We've seen contributions from Toumani Camara and Duop Reith this year for Portland, and I think Saloon would be able to add even more upside to that front court. At number 13, I have the Pelicans taking Reed Sheppard out of Kentucky. The Pelicans are an interesting team, and despite having a lot of guard options, they don't really have an elite shooter in the backcourt. Sheppard is a Kentucky local who's forced himself into a starting spot for the Wildcats, and he's elite in the pick and roll, not to mention that general shooting prowess. With a couple of the better true centers off the board, I think the Pelicans have to go in a different direction, and picking up scoring in the backcourt would be the way. At number 14, OKC is back up, and I'm giving them DJ Wagner, also out of Kentucky. The Thunder picked up Khalil Ware earlier in my mock just a couple picks ago, so now it's time to take a guy who provides something different to their squad. DJ Wagner has picked up on what was a slow start to his season, and he's showing off his quickness with the ball in his hands. Not to mention, his three-point percentage has jumped high, enough where I worry less about his finishing, which admittedly is still an issue. The Thunder don't have a true backup point guard, and DJ Wagner is one of the more NBA-ready 18-year-olds that we've seen in a long time. At number 15, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers taking Bub Carrington out of Pitt. Carlton Bub Carrington is a taller, skinnier guard who started the year on one of the craziest shooting streaks we've seen in college basketball. The lanky playmaker has come back down to earth, and he recently put up a very disappointing 0-7 shooting night from 3 against Purdue Fort Wayne. But he would be an immediate spark to a somewhat weak Cavaliers guard room, and his natural ability to make the right play, especially in the pick and roll, would be very dangerous for Cleveland off the bench. At number 16, I have the Knicks taking Tyler Smith from the G League. Tyler Smith is a versatile power forward who stands near 7 feet tall and shoots a very high clip behind the arc. We see with Julius Randle currently in town that the Knicks believe in pairing up Jalen Brunson with a dynamic forward who can put the ball on the floor when needed, and I think Tyler Smith fits that mold very well. He struggles on defense, especially in the paint, but if he teams up with Mitchell Robinson in New York, I think he'll have more than enough help down there to solidify his talent. At number 17, I have the Phoenix Suns taking Ryan Dunn out of Virginia. The Suns simply have too much star power to bring in another ball-dominant player, especially through the draft. Ryan Dunn plays his best ball without the rock in his hands, and his defensive switchability and overall athletic ability would make him a perfect fit anywhere in the Suns lineup. He doesn't profile as a spot-up shooter, which could jam spacing on certain possessions, but it's worth it to take a chance on one of the more NBA-ready forwards in the entire class, especially one that plays defense so well. At number 18, the Knicks are back on the clock, and I'm giving them Trey Alexander out of Creighton. Emmanuel Quickley is out with the OG Anunoby trade in. The Knicks are in the market for more combo guard depth, and Trey Alexander is working in his junior season at Creighton, and he has seen a bit of a dip in his shooting splits, but with that being said, we've seen through early conference play that his playmaking has been better than ever, and for a guy with a good shooting track record and more experience than most in this class, I think he would find himself a role in a Quentin Grimes-ish type position, and the Knicks could always use more combo guards to get the guys rolling off the bench. At number 19, Indiana's on the clock, and I have them taking Bobby Klintman from Carnes. The Pacers already have one of the most crowded forward rooms in the NBA, but what we've seen from Bobby Klintman in his draft campaign makes me feel like he's the perfect fit in Indy. He can shoot threes, he can run in transition, and we saw a defensive upside in a recent matchup with Alex Sarr and the Perth Wildcats, where Klintman put up 24 and 7. At 6'10", Klintman could play small or power forward for a Pacers team who's very invested in their young talent. At number 20, Orlando's on the clock, and I'm giving them Kyle Filipowski out of Duke. The Magic have been one of the most impressive teams in the league, much to do with their versatility in their starting lineup. We've seen them attack guard the past couple of years, so I think grabbing an NBA-ready big like Filipowski would just be the icing on the cake. Filipowski isn't a dominant physical force, and he doesn't necessarily make special plays, but he's a consistent player, and he has defensive capabilities that make him a surefire first-rounder in my mock, at least for now. At number 21, it's the Miami Heat, and I'm giving them Nikola Topic. Yeah, I think it's time to talk about it. I'm already anticipating the hate comments on this video, but I'm just drafting based on what I think teams should do in the upcoming draft. Despite all the hype, based on what I've seen from Nikola Topic, he should be a late first rounder. Topic is a known playmaker, and he's creative with the ball in his hands, but he is nowhere near an elite scorer, and a lot of the ways he scores overseas just aren't ways that would result in buckets in the NBA. I'm all for European prospects. I've highlighted Sarr and Richache both in the top 3, but to me, it's got to be about talent and NBA translation, and I just don't see it with Topic as of now. He has size, he's young, but I just don't think he's nearly as skilled or refined as people want you to believe. With that being said, he's still a first-round talent, and he has a lot of room to grow. At pick number 22, I have the New Orleans Pelicans taking Izan Almanza from the G League. With Jonas Valanciunas being towards the end of his deal, not a lot of young guys in the painted area to roll with Zion Williamson, I think the Pelicans should reach for a guy like Almanza. Almanza isn't the most creative with the ball in his hands, but he's an athletic big who plays by the rim and is active on the glass, averaging almost 5 offensive rebounds a game for the Ignite. Being so young, I think you bank on potential and appreciate the instant spark plug that he would bring to New Orleans. At 23, I have the Hawks grabbing Justin Edwards. Edwards is a player who has struggled mightily his freshman year at Kentucky. I was high on him earlier this year due to his shooting potential, plus his athleticism and finishing tools. As of now, though, things aren't clicking for Edwards on offense, but with the Hawks grabbing Klingon earlier, I think they might as well work on a prospect at the forward position, especially considering he was widely considered top 10 just a couple of weeks ago. At 24, I have the Thunder grabbing Hunter Sallis from Wake Forest. The junior guard has been an absolute tear the last couple of games and looks more and more like the NBA prospect we expected at Gonzaga throughout his junior campaign. Sallis is converting on his shots, taking the smart ones, and leading Wake Forest to a nice 8-game winning streak in the process. I think he's definitely an NBA level guard. At 25, I have the Nuggets taking Tyrese Proctor out of Duke. Tyrese Proctor has missed time this season with injury, and when he's been on the court, he's been underwhelming to say the least. But with that being said, Proctor is 6'5", a true point guard, and has the playmaking skills for himself and others that could get him on the court sooner rather than later. Who knows how long Reggie Jackson can be the answer at backup point guard, so I think Tyrese Proctor would fill the gaps. At number 26, I have the Philadelphia 76ers taking Wooga Poplar from Miami. Wooga has been one of the most exciting players in all of college basketball this season, being a threat from anywhere on the court with the ball in his hands. And the 76ers love their streaky shooters. A guy like Wooga Poplar could be much more productive than a guy like we saw with Shake Milton a couple of seasons ago. Coming to the league after his junior season, Wooga will know what it takes to carve out work in the backcourt. That's an area the Sixers are thin at outside of Maxey. I think it's a great fit. At number 27, the Pacers are back up, and I'm giving them Kevin McCullough Jr. out of Kansas. After taking a guy like Quintman earlier, who will most likely be a project player, I think grabbing McCullough Jr. out of Kansas seems like the smart move. McCullough doesn't profile as someone who will dominate the league, but he has a high floor and is clearly a piece that will crack the rotation. He can guard up on a team's 1 through 4, and he has the college success to convince me that he's a true winner. Something a young Pacers team could use in a draft selection. At number 28 is the Milwaukee Bucks, and I'm giving them Dalton Knecht out of Tennessee. Dalton Knecht is one of the best players in the entire SEC this season, and he's proven that he's an inside-outside threat, coming in at 6'6". At 22 years old, I think there's a bit of time the NBA scouts wish they could have had back from the transfer forward, but that time was used to develop Knecht into the well-rounded player that he is today. And when you look at one of the guys that was older last year in the class, like Jaime Jaquez Jr., he has had an incredible rookie campaign, and I think the Bucks might look to cash in on the same sort of hype for Dalton Knecht. At 29, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves taking AJ Mitchell out of UCSB. AJ Mitchell came somewhat out of nowhere as the junior point guard is lighting it up at UC Santa Barbara. Mitchell is 6'5" and runs the offense as he's been given the keys to the UCSB system. He's a smart, heads-up player who always makes the right pass and is creative around the rim, but his age, mixed with questions about his competition, hold him back to the late first round. And with the last pick of my mock, it's the Boston Celtics, and I have him taking Zach Edey out of Purdue. Zach Edey was known as a gimmicky player his whole career, and he's showing in his senior season that he's much more than just the tall college guy. To match his height, Edey has been finally knocking down his free throws and working on his shot blocking ability. With his center rotation off the bench, highlighted by Neemias Queta and Luke Kornet, I think that Celtics fans can rally around the idea of bringing in a 7'4" young guy who's shown more raw talent in his time at Purdue. So guys, with that being said, that's going to wrap up my first round NBA mock draft. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you appreciated your team's picks. We are so far away, and there's a lot of NBA and college ball left to be played, so come draft day, these probably won't mean anything, but I think it's nice to check in and see how some of the top prospects are doing. If you appreciated this video, leave a like or talk to me down in the comment sections if you didn't like what you saw. This is Colin from Next Man Up. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace out.